So this is really interesting. We have a lot of the hacker talk, a lot of talk about hacking airplanes. I'm excited for Charlie Miller. If you guys haven't heard of those researchers, they're the ones that hack the cars. You can YouTube their videos if you have not done so. I mean, literally, they're like turning the radio on and like shutting off the brakes. Really, really cool stuff. So, cool people to talk about. My idea here for today was to look at basically all this information that you're going to hear today, as well as just in general, like the industry. You go to Google, you start searching security, there's a lot of data out there. There's a lot around hacking and vulnerabilities, a lot of confusion too. I mean, last year it was ransomware. You may not know ransomware is kind of dead now. Now it's gone to like crypto mining. And you know what? 6 months from now, a year from now, it'll be something else. So what I hope to do for you in the next 30 or so minutes is to talk about basically what the reality is of these things. Like you saw the plane being hacked, like what's really going on. Give you kind of a reality check of exploitation, malware, etc. So essentially you can walk out here and be a little bit more smarter about this stuff that's out there, because there's a lot of FUD. That's why the long, crazy title. Now at Cisco, we love acronyms, so you could just call my talk the DVACMF talk or something. I don't know, so trying to make an acronym that didn't make any sense. But the whole point is, I'm going to basically help demystify hacking, vulnerabilities, and all that kind of stuff. Who am I? Why listen to me? I read a bunch of books. My last book from a few months ago is a forensics book. I'm doing a new one. I just started a contract for a new Security Operations Center book. Now, I'm not doing this to brag. The whole point is my topics I typically talk about and teach and write about are all like kind of vendor agnostic, more industry stuff. Like I'm not writing the ICE book or the firepower book. I'm writing the operation best practice book or the forensics book or how to hack with Raspberry Pis. Like that's kind of where I put my head at. I've spoken at many conferences. My last one was at DEF CON, the hacker conference in Las Vegas. My talk there is actually kind of cool. You guys can YouTube it. I think it just published like online. Basically, I hate phishers. You know phishing? You guys know what phishing is? So in Magic Land, it was just recorded, so in Magic Land, I hacked back. And the idea was people will typically try to trick you to install software. So I was like, yeah, you can install software on my computer, but you know what, this is confusing. You know, I have this technology called Cisco WebEx. Why don't I just share my screen and you can have access? So basically, hypothetically, I wrapped malware in WebEx, and then when they installed WebEx, I popped their box and turned their camera on and hacked them. So again, it's on YouTube. Magic Land, it happened in Magic Land. That's my blog. And my role, if you don't know, I'm at Cisco. I'm responsible for America, South America, and Canada for like all security. So any Cisco products, any practice, federal, commercial, select, etc. It's kind of the overlay guy. So that's me. All right, so I'm going to start with ground zero. What is a vulnerability? Now, this should be like 101 stuff. I have a 9-year-old. She probably knows what a vulnerability is. I'm like, lock the door. She didn't lock the door again. But the idea is this. You all know what a vulnerability is, but a lot of people don't realize if you don't have vulnerabilities, you don't need security. I'll say that again. You don't need firewalls, IPSs, all this stuff we constantly try to sell people and try to install and all that. If you don't have vulnerabilities, you don't need the products. Hopefully you all realize that. Security is a way to basically stop hackers from abusing vulnerabilities. So if you don't have them, you don't need security. However, you can take a laptop, you can bury it in the ground, it'll have 0 vulnerabilities. Awesome. But it also has 0 value. So as we use technology, whether it's IoT, whether it's putting technology in cars, whatever it is, as we open up things with technology, we also open up processes, we open up services, hence we open up vulnerabilities. Hopefully you realize that. If you wonder how bad a vulnerability is, you don't have to be a hacker. You simply can just go and look up what's called a CVE value. Hopefully you've heard of this. This is what's created by MITRE, and it's a way that as an industry, I can talk to Palo Alto, Fortinet, whoever it is, and say, watch out for this, and we're talking the same language. Hopefully we all understand that. What a lot of people don't know is malware doesn't have any standardization for naming. So when you hear about Heartbleed, shell shock, whatever it is, somebody pulled this out of their rear end. There is no formal name. Basically, these names you hear about is a researcher who discovered something and then gives it a cool name with a fancy logo, and it starts to basically be adopted in the news, and next thing you know, customers are calling me saying, I'm afraid of whatever the next thing is. So literally, I can call it Joey's Shoes and put bloodstains on it and say, watch out for Joey's Shoes, and if it's a cool attack, the news will pick it up, you'll see this on Google, and you'll be like, holy crap, Joey's Shoes, and you'll start calling like core BTS, like, am I protected from Joey's Shoes? There is no naming structure for malware. There is for vulnerabilities, but not for malware. Now, here's a couple key things that you should be aware of when it comes to understanding signatures, vulnerabilities, and malware. Vendors, in a lot of cases, will post the vulnerability stuff, but they don't post the malware stuff unless it becomes big news. So if you go to like Firepower, some vendor's product, and put Joey's Shoes or something, at first you're not going to see it. Just to be clear, because again, there's no standardization. Now eventually you may, but even then you may not see it. So for example, let's say a new attack happens, and you go and you search for that inside my tool, and I tell you at Cisco it's not there. Do you think we're not protecting you? Same thing for a lot of the other vendors that are out there. Again, I'm giving you non-vendor, vendor agnostic. This isn't a Cisco pitch. Here's the reality of things. It would be a bad idea if an attack happens and I post it in the tool for you to search for. You know why? The attackers probably have this tool as well. And what I don't want to have happen is I don't want them to reverse engineer and weaponize this. So part of my job is answering the phone call when a big attack happens because people say, holy crap, Cisco isn't protecting me. I search for Joey's Shoes and I don't see it. Well, one, we do have the rules in there. Actually, we call them truffle hunter rules, but we hide them. So we don't want the attackers to know what we're defending because we know that there's a vulnerability in some vendor's product, and we want to make sure the vendor can prepare themselves by patching it, etc. You as customers can fix it before we actually put it in here so the attackers can find it. But even then, understand that malware doesn't really have a naming structure. So first point I want you to understand, if you ever see in the news that there's some type of attack and you're afraid and you go to whatever vendor it is and you search and you don't see defenses, call your core BTS or call your solution provider and ask, can you talk to the vendor and see if I'm protected? Like, what are the actual CVEs or what are the rules that protected me? Because my understanding is I'm probably protected, but it's hidden. Because most vendors will hide it for a good 6 months to a year. I bet a lot of you didn't know that. So when you're searching these tools and then you're calling me, I'm going to basically tell you, well, you're protected. I just can't tell you the exact rule unless we have an NDA. All right, first point. Second point, this chart right here comes from our Talos research group. What this shows is when malware does hit the news, we see double, sometimes triple in growth of attack. So let's say Joey's Shoes hits the news. Watch out for Joey's Shoes. What typically we see following that announcement is, for the next 2 to 3 months, a boat ton of attacks start happening. Why? Think about that. If it's in the news now, plus most of the time in the news it says, here is the patch, here's how to fix that, yet we still see that. The reason why is attackers know that we as an industry are awful at dealing with vulnerability management. They know that even if you know you're vulnerable, it's going to take you forever to figure out how to fix that vulnerability, and a lot of times you don't even have the tools to fix it. So, point number 2, when you do hear in the news, watch out for Joey's Shoes or whatever it is, really read that article because it's very likely all the attackers are going to start using it. What I typically advise people to do is download Metasploit and search for the name of that attack. Search for Joey's Shoes. What you'll find is the industry on the attacker side and pen test side has probably weaponized that attack, and you can see that, oh, there's 6 new versions that you can use right now to basically abuse that vulnerability. So again, Vulnerabilities 101. Understand there's a naming structure. Understand that vendors aren't going to tell you they're protecting you because we don't want the attackers to know. Understand these crazy names you hear are made up, yet when they do hit the news, they matter. And again, this is an example of what I'm talking about. This tool is actually a pretty tool. It's called Armitage. It's an overlay of Metasploit, but this is all free stuff you can download. But my point is, when you hear in the news, watch out for Struts 2.0, I can type in Struts, and there's literally weaponized attacks. It's called script kiddies, but anybody, my 9-year-old, can basically click that, point it at your network, and hit execute. By the way, at DEF CON, my 9-year-old and myself was doing this lab for kids, 9 to like 15, 16 years old. One kid was funny. She's like, what if I point this at Facebook? I'm like, don't do that. Like, because this is actually real stuff. Like, we use real data. And she did put it at Facebook for about 30 seconds. I had to smack her hand. But that's what I'm talking about. I can go, I can type in Joey's shoes, whatever it is. If it's been weaponized, you're going to find it in a tool like this. If you can find it in a tool like this, a 9-year-old can use it. So understand that's the simplicity of things. Now, attacking 101. This is what a lot of people don't understand with this technology. There is not a silver bullet. I think best of breed is garbage. And I'll say it again. Best of breed is garbage. Here's the reason why. If a technology is best of breed, if it's so effective it's going to stop an attack, what do you think is going to happen? The vendor's going to go out and they're going to sell the hell out of that. I don't care if you're a bad guy, a good guy, green guy, blue guy, whatever, buy my technology. So like when the sandbox came out a long time ago in a land far, far away, the sandbox is very effective. What did the attackers do? They bought the sandbox. Now most modern malware is sandbox aware. For example, malware we've seen in the last 6 months won't execute till you close the file. Why? Well, sandboxes will automatically open files and scan it. Humans close the file. So let's wait for the close, then launch. Malware will be hidden within files, so a PDF within a Word or something like that. Why? Sandboxes open, scan, open, scan, open, scan. Humans will actually open the second embedded file and infect them. It's a cat and mouse, it's attack and defend. So best of breed, maybe best of breed for that specific type of attack. I would argue and say it's all about layered security because there is a life cycle to attacks. Now here's the challenge I find when I consult with customers. This is a basic life cycle. The attacker is going to exploit a vulnerability. Remember, if you don't have a vulnerability, they can't do anything. But if the attacker can find your vulnerability, they're going to exploit it, and then they're going to deliver something, they're going to do something with that exploit. So I exploit your computer and then drop crypto mining or ransomware or a backdoor to accomplish a goal. Now realize there's different technologies to defend this. We call this the kill chain. So this is me taking like industry capabilities and aligning it to the kill chain. This is where complexity starts. Because basically you're thinking, all right, well in the before stage, how do I stop people from seeing my network and basically attempting attacks? So I use technology like reputation security. For example, if I'm going to attack you, and I did a talk at DEF CON like 3 years ago now where I created a fake person called Emily Williams. I can't name the restaurant she really works at, but they have owls and they like have orange shorts and they sell chicken wings. But I made her a new hire at an organization. She friended people on Facebook, and then at Christmas time I posted Christmas cards. When you would click my Christmas card, you would see the reindeers dance around. Also, I was doing a tool called the Browser Injection Framework, BEEF, and I was doing browser injections. I stole passwords, got VPN access, and owned the hell out of the company. But in that use case, if I had, let's say, pull my Cisco hat out, I had a reputation security through Umbrella. When you click the Christmas card, it would say, wait a second, this Christmas card company's been online for 2 hours, they're hosted from GoDaddy, and only the Christmas cards are coming to my organization. That is not a Christmas card company, and we'll drop it. You'll get a block page. That's an example of a capability early in the attack phase. That capability, though, has nothing to do with exploitation. The BEEF attack that I was doing, that capability has nothing to do with that. And that's my point. My point is, you as customers are looking at these different steps of the attack kill chain and trying to figure out what is the best capability. This, again, is why I say best of breed is not necessarily important. It's about understanding how this stuff works together. Now, this is, to me, is a two-dimensional problem. Let's go three-dimensional. Every part of your network is different. It has its own kill chain. The cloud is different from your hosts. Your laptops are different from your network. Even your network data center is different from the actual network. The data center should have a kill chain. Most of my customers, I start talking about data center, and they're like, oh yeah, it's all on the edge. So that means if you're inside the data center, you have keys to the kingdom. Even though 80% of the traffic happens in the data center, there's not a lot of stuff coming and going like a network. When I talk to cloud, most customers I talk to have no idea what I'm talking about. Like cloud, you understand that there's security to the cloud. There's security within the cloud if you're doing like Azure or like Microsoft type stuff or Amazon. But then what about like hosted services, SaaS? Like you can't install a firewall on like Gmail. So there's different types of cloud, again, with their own kill chains requiring their own capabilities. Maybe you need a CASB. If you don't know what that is, it's a cloud controlled access secure broker. Maybe you need internal security. Maybe you need Duo. You know, we talked about Duo authentication type stuff. It all depends on what we're talking about. And this is the challenge. Now, you think it's bad enough? The theme of today was IoT. IoT brings an additional challenge, which I love because, like, I personally, this is my my post lady. I have the doorbell, I have the thermostat, I got the Alexa, and I'll tell you now, it's funny because this challenge is not getting any better anytime soon, and you have to deal with this. I have a 9-year-old again, and like I had explained to her what a tape is, and I'm like, yeah, when I used to listen to music, I would fast forward and rewind to listen to a song, and she's like, that's freaking annoying. Like, really? She'll be telling her kids, hey, when I turn on the TV, I had to use this controller and press buttons, and I had to find the light switch, I had to run to the wall to turn the light. Her kids are gonna be like, really? It's all gonna be voice operated. It's all gonna be apps. And the challenge is, most people, when it comes to these products, don't care about security. I'm sure Charlie Miller and company is gonna like totally tear this apart. But the idea is I can't install firewalls and IPSs on my Nest. And a lot of times these manufacturers don't care. They don't, because why? Why should they care? There's one law right now, one law that just came out in California that doesn't even come into play until like 2020. And the law is like, kind of like you should add security. But other than this, IoT people, they can do whatever they want. I find in most cases with IoT, they'll find a vulnerability and they'll wait months because there's a software update and they'll just wrap all that stuff in a software update, not knowing that they're having their customers vulnerable for like a few months. Now, how real is it? I'll bring it home to this room here. These are like 4 things I've hacked. So at our company, GSX, this is our Cisco one, we have like 20,000 people with these like blinky little badges. I can do a replay attack and make myself pink and everybody around me pink when everything's blue. One I like to do is a lot of the manufacturers will post their BIOS and their updates. So just like my talk at DEF CON, I can download an IoT's software. I can wrap it with a backdoor. So there's a program called Sienna 1, freeware. You can, again, Magic Land. I'm not telling you to be hackers, but if you wanted to, you can download Sienna Spyware 1. You can take the BIOS, you can wrap in like a backdoor, and then I can phish you by saying, hey, there's a new update. Download the update. You download the update, the IoT device will still work because most of them don't validate the actual update. It just validates it's the right format and size. It's not like Cisco, like iOS or something. You install our software, it says this is an invalid version of code. Most IoT devices don't validate that. So I just wrap a backdoor, phish you, you install it, opens up a backdoor, and I have a backdoor to your network. Very common way. By the way, this is my top 5 ways to hack IoT. You can take a picture if you want to be evil, but it's not really that hard. You know, sometimes it's even the application. This one's pretty funny. This is a true vulnerability. So CVE you can look up for toilet. And this toilet has an app. And the app, you can actually make it be a debay. We fried somebody's rear end. We made it like 110 degrees, so when they're sitting on it and like fried them. At one bar, we had the toilet playing Hanson doo-wop over and over again in the bathroom. Actually, at the same bar, 6 months later, we found, no, there's a bar nearby. This is in New York City. Same kind of problem. They had a jukebox, and the jukebox was using cloud services. So we basically popped the application and then set Hanson to play for 10,000 times. So even when they unplugged the jukebox and plugged it back in, it would download the next playlist, which is Hanson for 10,000 times, and start it over again. So that whole neighborhood hated us because their toilets are playing Hanson, their jukebox is playing Hanson, etc. So even with these IoT devices, my point is I'm not plugging a computer in the toilet. Just like Charlie and these guys, they're not plugging their computer in the actual car. Sometimes it's the applications. It's not just, IoT is a big problem. Same thing, I can't name the vendor, but one of these vendors on here had a really bad one. This comes from my talk from 5 years ago. But in this use case, the IoT vendor is using cloud. It's a cloud vulnerability where the user's folders were publicly accessible. So what you can do is a little social engineering. If your Facebook name is, I don't know, kittycat12345, your eBay name is kittycat12345, most likely when you created this share company's thing, I got a bug bounty, so I can't name it. They told me not to, but if you created an account within one of these companies, most likely you're going to use kittycat12345. So if I look for the public folder / kittycat12345, now I have access to like all of your pictures. Now in this company, again, as long as I talk about it, but not name the company, but how the software company would work is, anytime you take a picture in your phone, you not knowing it would take that picture and put it in the cloud. You wouldn't even have to like ask for it, it'd just be in the cloud. So like, imagine like, you know, that sexing you were doing with your loved one, that's in the cloud, in a public accessible folder. That check that you cashed with your Wells Fargo or Capital One is in the cloud, because you took a picture. So we were monitoring certain people, and one was we found a drug dealer that was bragging about how he makes a bunch of money selling coke and drugs, but he works at some McDonald's or something. So what was awesome was we caught a picture of him texting where you see his tax forms that says where he lives, who he is, et cetera, plus the drug money. And I had to cut out because this is core BTS, but there's also like cocaine and some girl half naked on the side. So it's like, Your Honor, that wasn't me. Oh yeah, well there's your tax forms with all of your information. There's like the half-naked girl, the machine guns, and the drugs. Like, it's pretty funny. So it's like, you know, any public folder accessible is considered potential evidence. So anyways, here's one for you. About a couple of years ago, I researched flashlight apps. You guys know the flashlight app? I'm gonna come here right now and I'm gonna turn on my flashlight. Just being able to do this, that's it. I downloaded a bunch of apps and looked at the permissions. Even permissions is a vulnerability. Look at these permissions. It's hard to see the checks, but here's the point of this. Some of these flashlight apps have the permission to send email, permission to see geolocation, see where you're at. We were using a fake flashlight app in Vegas to see if people went to strip clubs. So if you installed our flashlight app, I can access your flashlight app. I have permissions to see your geolocation. I can copy that and play it in Google Maps and see if you went to a strip club. Apple a lot of times will check secure software, but they don't necessarily check permissions. So we find even in the IoT world, sometimes permissions are overextended. Like again, why does a flashlight need email or cell phone access? There's no reason for it. So again, I know the theme of this was IoT, so I'm kind of beating up on the IoT thing, but know that IoT is just one of the many challenges, kill chains, et cetera, you got to think about if you want to secure your network. Now my goal isn't to scare you and then leave, like, thank you, good luck, because if I do that, you'll go to RSA or Black Hat with 1,000 vendors that are going to promise you the next best of breed product. That's not what you should do. My recommendation is this. Start thinking about your capabilities against all this stuff I just talked about. And think about when you make a change. So when somebody promises you a technology, what's the complexity associated with that? Half the customers I talk to, they get scared, they get terrified, they go buy a next-gen product or buy whatever, and they don't realize that there's a lot of complexity. They're actually hurting their security. They're not thinking about how effective they're going to be by making that change. My recommendation is anything you do from moving forward, people, process, and technology, which by the way, this is the big three things. It's not just technology. You may need to hire somebody and train somebody. You may need to implement how that service is used, but look at how this can make you more effective. And I'll give you an example. I just talked all about vulnerabilities and how important it is to manage vulnerabilities. Most of my customers suck at that. This is SAN's recommendations for vulnerability management. Identify what's on the network. Identify it for risk. Is that a data center or is that like a home lab? Scan it for vulnerabilities and then fix what you can. Do you realize that you can automate this? My recommendation would be network access control. Now you know who and what's coming on the network. Integrate that with a vulnerability scanner. Nexpose, Tenable, I don't care, Core Impact. Now you can say, when something connects to my network, automatically scan it. Boom, you just basically automated vulnerability management. By the way, most access control technologies can even remediate. If I see a CVE of 8 or higher, a really bad vulnerability, quarantine. Now you've just automated this and the response via vulnerability management. Yes, there's complexity with this, but the capabilities outweigh that. You need to start thinking that way. That's how you're going to be more effective at security. And some of these older concepts like, oh, I'm going to buy 2 or 3 vendors of the same product, like the military used to buy 2 or 3 firewalls, that's a waste of money. If the attack is going to come over port 80 and you got 10 vendor firewalls with port 80 open, it does nothing. Now, I want to be clear, you may want to use, for example, in this use case, a firewall for the data center, a firewall for your edge, a firewall for the host. That makes sense, but there's no reason to have the same capability. Layer the capabilities. What are capabilities? Capabilities 101. In general, I don't care if it's artificial intelligence and alien space technology, whatever this vendor is promising you, in the end, there's 3 capabilities that they're offering you. They're either going to offer you something that's known, a signature, antivirus, IPS, watch out for this specific attack. Something that's bad behavior, watch out for port scanning and all this, or an anomaly. That's really the 3 capabilities. An anomaly, by the way, is a little different. Anomaly is a baseline. Here's what's normal, but for the first time I'm seeing something unusual. I'll give you an example. At Cisco, I can email from Cisco to Gmail, no problem. But if I was to email all my Cisco emails to Gmail, what do you think I'm going to do in the next couple of days? Where's Bob Persicani? He can tell you. That means I'm going to leave, because I'm basically dumping all my corporate email to my personal account. So the idea is we actually have behavior anomaly detection in our email, where if I start sending a bunch of emails to my Gmail, HR calls me and says, hey, you okay? You want a brownie? What's going on? Because it's an anomaly. Same technology is actually effective for IoT. If that, that thermostat for the first time starts doing port scans, has never done that, or it starts to upload data in a weird way, maybe it's allowed to hit the internet, but that's an anomaly. So anomaly is also very good, and it gets into this whole stem of like AI, of looking for anomalies, turning it into signatures, and so forth and so on. So understand this is best practice. Now, I will tell you right now, that idea of set and forget from the best of breed vendor is also complete horse poo. And here's the reason why. Security 101. If I'm going to sell you a product, I don't care what this product is. If it's signature based and you give it with the latest signatures, I'm going to sell it to Walmart, to Sam's Hot Car Lot, to some oil company, to a church. And all of you are going to buy my product and you're going to set it and forget it. So how the heck can I create the most perfect signatures to defend Walmart, the oil company, Sam's Hot Car Lot, etc.? I can't. So what all the vendors do is we give you somewhat of the best of breed, watch out for this stuff, but what that means is half the signatures have nothing to do with you, you, and you, and you. So you're buying this product, you're setting it, forgetting it, and half the stuff it's defending doesn't even exist on your network. It exists on Walmart's network or Sam's Hot Car Lot's network. This is, again, why set and forget is also a bad idea. It is about tuning that final bit of turning off what doesn't matter in that signature set and turning on what only matters to you. Because I assure you, if you set and forget, there will be stuff that's specific to your network and not Walmart, not Sam's Hot Car Lot, that won't be turned on. So proper security is actually about tuning security to your network. And by the way, if you turn everything on, it becomes a brick. There's bazillions amounts, and I'm Brazilian, but there's billions amounts of vulnerabilities out there, and you probably can only turn on 40, 50,000 things in that tool. Also, your network, by the way, can also be security. A lot of people don't even think about that. They're so focused on taking products and plugging it in their network. So here's the deal. What can you do? How can you make yourself more effective? What can you do starting tomorrow that you can walk away with to defend the real problem, which is everything I talked about? Vulnerabilities, challenges on where you should plan your defenses, and understand how to improve your people, process, and technology. I would suggest for you to go back and get a whiteboard and actually lay out your capabilities. I don't care, we're talking vendor agnostic, I don't care about the product. What are your security capabilities? We'll start in this example with an end user laptop. Do they have antivirus? What about if antivirus, which is known signatures, fails? Do you have breach detection? How about their firewall? Is there a host firewall? Do they have VPN? What about when they click a link? Like when Joey does his little fake e-card service and they click it, is it going to allow them to go to a bad site? What are the actual capabilities that exist? How about when they plug into your network? Do you have access control? How do you authenticate them? How about when, if they have malware and bring it on the network? Is there any kind of like behavior monitoring inside the network? What about exploitation? Is there an IPS? By the way, these things you can pull from guidelines like NIST and ISO, or you can talk to somebody like myself or Cisco. We have what's called SAFE, which we basically take capabilities and align them. But the whole point is, this is not a product. So your next-gen firewall may have 4 capabilities. Maybe it's a firewall, it's an IPS, it's breach, it's a geolocation tool. But I highly suggest you do something like this. And this is going to be different for every person here's network, as well as different for different parts of your network. Remember, your cloud, your data center, your LAN, your branch will have different capabilities. Do this analysis, and then basically start to do this whole like, do I have it? Green. Do I not? Red. And if I have something, but it's not that good, yellow. There's 2 things that you can accomplish. 1, you can accomplish gap analysis. You may say, well, you know what? We have 0 detection capabilities inside our data center. Maybe we have best of breed on the edge, but there's nothing inside the network. So if this fails, nothing is validating that. You may also find that you have dual same checks that you don't need. Why do we have a proxy in a next-gen firewall doing the same thing? Maybe it's a waste of money. By the way, from Cisco, this is like products we sell. But again, it doesn't matter if it's Cisco or not. I'm asking you to start to look at your capabilities, regardless of vendor, and try to challenge basically what would happen. It's called a tabletop exercise. But what would happen if these attacks actually happened? And the same thing, here's a data center example. I have the cloud on the bottom and your physical data center with an edge firewall. But the idea is this. You need to stop chasing ambulances. You may hear about Joey's shoes or Heartbleed or some attack, but it's going to change. And the best way for you to defend yourself is to understand your capabilities and layer them. If you do that, if the firewall fails, the IPS can work. If the IPS fails, the breach can work. If the breach fails, the host firewall can work. If the host firewall fails, and so on and so forth. If you do that, it doesn't matter the attack. Also, if you understand that these tools, all these tools have nothing to do with vulnerabilities. They just basically defend around the vulnerable system. Here's an analogy, because again, my daughter and I just taught this stuff in DEF CON. A vulnerability could be locking a door at your house. However, what if you go camping? This is her idea too. Give her props for this. If you go camping, you have a tent. You can't lock a tent. That's an example of IoT. You can't lock the IoT. So your only option is to secure around it. So in her case, it was, Dad, stand in front of the tent. Don't let anybody in. I'm the firewall. I'm the IPS. Don't go in there, kind of thing. IoT is an example. If you can't lock the tent, secure around it. Segmentation. Monitor the IoT device for bad behavior. Stop thinking about specific threats. Start thinking about capabilities. That's what I'm hoping you take away from this. Go to the vendors when they say, hey, we can give you this awesome thing. That's awesome, but what are the capabilities? Do I get known, unknown, behavior? How will this capability be different from the capabilities I have? What's the complexity? Is this going to be a bunch more crap I got to learn, or is this going to be something that I can plug into and basically have as another layer for my security? That is best practice. Okay, here's a Cisco products. You can keep it even simple. Here's an example of a DMZ. So I can just ignore the endpoint and say, well, on our DMZ, we should at least have a firewall, next-gen firewall maybe, an IPS, reputation security. Think of those capabilities, and then start thinking about how to enhance them. So, by the way, as I mentioned, the vulnerability data, those can be used to tune these products. This is where threat intelligence comes in, which is a whole other topic. But the whole idea, again, is I'm simplifying security down to capabilities, and I hope you can do that. So I'll end with this. Security is a cat and mouse game. A year ago, again, it was about ransomware and exploitation. Don't click this site because there will be an exploit kit. And if you click the site, it's going to drop ransomware in your computer. You know what? I'll say this. I think ransomware was the best thing for security. I think it was awesome for security. It scared people so much that people talk about it. I can be at a soccer match and people will be talking about security. I'm like, this is what I do at work. I thought I'm at the soccer match. Ransomware was great. However, things have changed. Ransomware tells you when you're infected. Crypto mining does not tell you you're infected. If your data center has crypto mining, you're not going to know unless you do forensics. But you know what? 6 months from now, it's going to change again. So I challenge you, go back, give yourself a capabilities analysis, or talk to core BTS, or talk to a security professional. Stop looking at best of breed. Stop ambulance chasing certain threats, because again, they're made up most of the time, and start looking at your actual capabilities. When you start thinking about security, when you talk to vendors, question how it's going to improve your actual network. That's what's going to make you more secure. I have a gift. If you want to take a picture, I'm also a dork and I write comics. These are not hacking links. I'm not doing a phishing attack here. But I've written 2 comics, and I paid somebody from Marvel Comics to hand draw these comics. They talk about attack and defend. So you want to learn more about different types of attack and defend comics, I just published a new comic. They're free to download. Again, but these are 2 different comics. One's been around for the last 2 years. You may have seen it at Cisco Live, Black Hat, etc. If you've come to the Cisco booth, we've been handing them out. And then the other one I just published now. All right? The last thing I got to say is this. If anybody out there ever says, well, we don't have the money for security, we don't have the time for security, if anybody out there ever challenges you to continue to invest in security, you tell them this. Security is a journey. It's not a destination. You don't become secure. If you become secure, 6 months from now, you saw the airplane, they were secure 18 years ago, I guess. You know, you become secure, eventually you'll become insecure. Vulnerabilities will be introduced. Security is something you have to continuously invest in. Last year, again, if I was up here, I'd be talking about ransomware. Now I'm talking about crypto mining. Next year, if I get invited back, I'll be talking about something else. Think about that. And again, think about your particular networking capabilities. Thanks for your time.